There's a point where I would say at least for me, it'll vary person to person, but I would say at least in your late 20s or early 40s, there's this shift that happens. And of course it doesn't happen all at once. It's not this single moment. It's something that accumulates, and it just adds up over time. And for me, it started at 38, and by 40 it was glaringly obvious. It was very apparent. So, let's rewind the tape. I want to give you some context into where I came from in case you don't know. But so I grew up in the Bible Belt of the Texas Panhandle, and if you're not very good at geography, it is the square part of Texas at the tippy top. Okay, and so I grew up in a Christian household, middle class, Protestant Christian, that flavor, Baptists, non-denom kind of thing, and I went to public school, just a normal public school. It was pretty cookie cutter stuff, but the way that my brain worked was definitely not. It didn't match the whole cookie cutter life that I was in. But yeah, on paper, my upbringing was pretty average. However, on a personal note, I was the black sheep of the family. I was very different, vastly different compared to the rest of my family, compared to my siblings, and also a lot of the people that I went to school with. And I mean, I never really fit in school. I had some friends here and there, but I mean, early on it was rather difficult. I just wanted to be homeschooled, honestly, but my parents they didn't have the means. But yeah, I mean, as I got older, because yeah, I went along with the whole Christian thing growing up. When you're young, you just kind of model what your parents do. You emulate them to an extent. You elevate them in your mind. You think that they're so intelligent and they know all of these things that you don't. And so you take what they say as gospel. And I did until I got just a little bit older, till I was hitting 12, 13. That's when I because I was watching I was listening to Jars of Clay and Stephen Curtis Chapman, the Christian music that my parents listened to, some Amy Grant, right? But I then started deviating from that and started listening to Third Eye Blind and Bush and Nirvana, those bands. And my parents did not like that. They did not like that one bit. And but then yeah, and also as a kid, and also to quote Nate Bargatze, I had 80s and 90s Christian parents, which is the most Christian of the Christian. And yeah, I wasn't allowed to watch anything. I mean, like he said, when The Simpsons came out, my parents were like, "Oh, I guess they're just showing R-rated TV shows now." So when we would watch TV shows in my house, whether it was Home Improvement, whatever, the moment that they said a cuss word, whether it was damn or hell, whatever it was, maybe even ass, whatever they were allowed to say on air, my parents would change the channel. And it was so frustrating because you're into the story. You're watching, you're watching Home Improvement. You're really getting into it. And then he says a cuss word. He says damn or hell. And then they change the channel. And all I can think of, and I even expressed it, it didn't make any sense to me because they just said it. I heard it. So what's the point of, and they may never say any of that again. They may never cuss again. So what's the point of leaving the show? I mean, we're just going to watch it again the next day. And then like clockwork, if they say damn or hell, boom, they're changing the channel again. That kind of behavior didn't make sense to me because I already heard it. it's not like we're going to be able to go back in time here and prevent me from already hearing it. I already heard it. It's already done. Why can't we just keep watching? So that didn't make sense to me. But yeah, I deviated from the Christian ways as I got to my teenage years, and I stopped listening to Jars of Clay and started listening to, it progressed over time. It was Third Eye Blind and then Nirvana and Bush, and then it escalated. Once I got 14, started getting curious about Limp Bizkit and Korn, Coal Chamber, started listening to those bands, and, Slipknot. And I've always liked Blink-182. And I started getting to Eminem, and I was able to accumulate some of those posters. Had a Blink-182 poster, had an Eminem poster, had a Kurt Cobain poster, had some other posters I can't really remember. And that was also when Blacklights were in, and I had some Blacklight posters. And and I started accumulating CDs, but I was kind of keeping them hidden. My parents, they knew that I had them, but they really they kind of left it alone for a bit. And I started listening to the devil's music, right? I started listening to the devil's music, and that's kind of point being is that this Christian lens was always being applied to me, and I was just trying to be myself, and I was gravitating towards things organically. And my parents, they were trying to manufacture this stuff out of me, and I couldn't not listen to it. It was a part of me. I resonated with Linkin Park and all of these bands, and yeah, there was cuss words and things like that. Of course, there was explicit content, and there were my parents, and they were trying to protect me. I get that. Sure. But it's just, I'm just trying to use this as a way for you to communicate where I came from, and just the idea of my identity as a person was always being challenged. Even when I got older, even into my 30s. But there was something I think I'm missing here. I know there's a big picture here, and I'm not going to get everything, but there was something else. I can't quite remember it. Man, what was it? Oh, yeah, I had a Tom Green poster. This was what I wanted to add to it. I really love Tom Green. I thought he was hilarious. I would have to watch MTV after my parents went to sleep. I watched the Tom Green show a lot. And so I bought a poster that he had devil horns, and it said, "My bum is on fire." It was referencing the Bum Bum song that he came out with in either the late 90s or early 2000s. I can't remember which. But I just remember that I think I was 15 I was 15 probably. And I think I was having an argument with my parents, and I said the word damn. Or so, I don't remember. I said hell or damn, I don't know. But my dad, he just was like, "It's the music." And then he stormed into my room and started ripping posters off my wall, and he grabbed my stereo and grabbed my CDs and confiscated all of them. It was a bad day. And he ripped my Bum is on Fire poster. He ripped my Tom Green poster. That was my favorite poster. And then he took down the Eminem poster, all these great posters. He took them down. But I say all of this to paint a picture of just, I was just vastly different from the rest of my family. And I still listen to that music. That was a part, that's the thing, is that never changed. I still listen to that stuff. And music is a very important part of my life. It's very important to me, these particular bands. And especially now that I'm getting older, I get nostalgic and still listen to those bands. I love Blink-182. I've got a couple of Blink tattoos on my leg. But yeah, I mean, but the reason why I say this is because even in my 30s, so by the time I hit 30, I was 32 or 33. I became a parent at 29, and also to preface, I'm not trying to throw my parents under the bus. I'm just trying to show you that's the milieu I grew up in. But yeah, I've always been my own person, just had a strong personality. I've always been a critical thinker. I've always been very introspective and reflective, and I just, yeah, whenever I became a parent, I became more of a critical thinker. And by the time I hit 30, I started researching history, and I read The Creature from Jekyll Island, and that's what red pilled me. It showed me, how things worked, the financial system, how much of my life was controlled by this central bank. And then I've even read the Communist Manifesto. I own it because I wanted to know the enemy's playbook. But yeah, I converted to Catholicism in my early 30s, and that still, it was something my parents did not approve of, and they let me know it to a certain degree. We would get into kind of debates and whatnot about theology, about Protestant and Catholic theology, and of course they had the common objections with Catholicism, and I was able to, articulate how those weren't accurate, but yeah, I mean, but now I at 38, I left the Catholic Church. So I left that system. I saw a lot of things wrong with that particular system and religion as a whole. And then of course you get those, it's not a religion, it's a relationship. It is a religion. I've made a video on this in the past, but that's just a marketing slogan that Protestants like to use to put space between them and Catholics, because of course Catholics believe in works and things like that. There's a few differences there's a lot of differences with Catholic theology versus Protestant theology. But yeah, I mean, this isn't what this is about. I'm not gonna dive into every reason why I left religion, Christianity specifically. I just want to throw that out there for some context. And I'm not looking for a new system. I've had enough of systems. And what I'm doing now is just standing in the middle of life without one. And that's what this age is like, at least for me. I mean, I removed the foundation that I had, and there's no foundation replacing it. There's no replacement waiting right now. It's just me and whatever I choose to build. And so, I'm not just dealing with my own life, just like the rest of you aren't just dealing with your own life. I grew up in a world, I was born in 85, so I was an 80s, 90s kid, and I'm watching the world that I grew up in completely unravel. There's all these institutions that people trusted, financial systems, political systems, cultural institutions, and the trust is gone. And I never trusted them even when I was younger. But now that I'm well read, I understand these systems, and I know that they're not built to benefit anyone but themselves. And there are, they do have agendas that are not very good. And I'm not an oracle of truth, but I do know that any system should always err on the side of freedom. And if you don't know where to start, that should be the lighthouse, the beacon. You should start at freedom and work your way from there. And I do have my own beliefs of what could work if applied, but I am not claiming authority. I'm not saying I have the answers. I'm just saying that I have an opinion, but I am realistic. And I'm like everyone else. I'm strapped in, just waiting for the next shoe to drop, because it does feel like something bad is about to happen in this country, in this world. It something, and it just things are going downhill, especially economically. People are getting laid off right and left. People are flipping out online because of it. And recently the Federal Reserve has reversed course and gone back to, they went from quantitative tightening to now back to quantitative easing. And like I said, I've read The Creature from Jekyll Island. I know where these systems lead. I am a student of history. I know the cycles of history. I know I've studied the Bolshevik Revolution. I've studied communism. I've read The Fourth Turning. I've listened to the entire interview between Yuri Bezmenov and G. Edward Griffin in 1984 about ideological subversion. And so I've sat with with all of this information, I've gone over it repeatedly, and it all points to a. It's just funny. I went from talking about Tom Green and the Bum Bum song to now I'm talking about some serious stuff. But this is So this is a different format than what I normally do. But it all points to a big question mark over an exclamation mark. Like I said, I know something bad is about to happen. Everyone online is talking about how they feel like something is coming, and no one knows exactly what that looks like, and neither do I. But like I said, everyone feels it. This feels like the calm before the storm. And all I'm doing is I'm just pointing that out there. I'm pointing it out there. That's all I'm doing. Pointing it out. I'm putting it out there. I'm like everyone else. I'm waiting in the silence. And I don't know when, but it seems like it's coming up pretty quickly. And if you are familiar with how fiat currency and how the fiat monetary system works, then ours is pretty long in the tooth. So I mean that's why I believe it's a very short forecast, just because we've been a country for 249 years, almost 250. And then of course, like I said, I read The Fourth Turning. There's always a major conflict every 80 years, and 80 years ago was World War II. 80 years before that was the American Civil War. Every 80 to 100 years, you can trace back some big event, some big war, collapse, things like that. And I mean, we've already been through a lot, especially millennials. I mean, we've been through many economic downturns and wars and crises, things like that. So 2008, the dot-com bubble, 9/11, you name it, Gulf War, Afghanistan. And, but yeah, there's something coming. The future, it looks bleak. It's not something I'm optimistic about. I mean, I would say that's just the logical position given what's happened, what's happening, and what's likely next. And so, I mean, that's where we stand, I think. And I'm not here to tell you what to do next because I don't know. I just know I'm just here to say it out loud. So if you see the same things, you know that you're not alone. We're in this together. I mean, I say I mean a lot. That's a filler word I constantly use. I'm working on it. So if that annoys people, I don't care. I'm trying. I'm a human being. But yeah, I mean, but there it is. There it is. I'm just waiting to see what's next. Just like the rest of you cats out there. So all I can say is, keep your head on a swivel and listen to some Limp Bizkit.